Cassidy and Hammy and Crystal, the Board Game Blitzers, we're showing you our favorite games.
My number 80 is Blocus, or Blockus. I'm not actually sure how it's pronounced, and I've heard it both ways. So in this game, it's an abstract game where players are placing polyominoes of their individual player color onto a grid, and the rule is that one of your polyominoes' corners must be touching the corner of a previously placed piece. So players are often trying to place their pieces in ways to block their opponents from being able to play theirs, and when you can't play a piece any longer, you're eliminated, and the last player standing is the winner. It's pretty quick to play, and it's really simple to teach. You could teach this to kids, your grandparents, just about anybody. So while it's simple, and it's also now kind of a mass market game in that you can buy it at big box stores like Walmart and Target, I still really like it, and it's always a lot of fun when it comes out and hits the table. So that's my number 80, Blocus. My number 79 is Codenames Duet. So this one actually surprised me quite a bit. I had played the regular Codenames a lot when it was first released, but I'd kind of burned myself out on it. So when I heard that they were releasing another version of Codenames, and a two-player one at that, I honestly kind of thought it was going to be a cash grab based on the popularity of the original game. But I gave it a try at my local board game cafe and found that I loved it. I love it so much more than the original Codenames because it's cooperative, and there's a lot of interest in the whole, the assassin is different depending on which side you're on, and so one of your clues may be the other player's assassin, and there's a lot of nuance to it that I really enjoy, and it surprised me quite a bit. I don't play a ton of two-player games, but this one is one I enjoy a lot. So that's my number 79, Codenames Duet. My number 78 is a real-time game that takes less than 15 minutes to play, but packs a lot of fun into that short amount of time, and that is Escape the Curse of the Temple. So in this game, players are frantically rolling dice and moving their pawn from room to room in a temple, trying to find hidden treasures and then escape before time runs out. But the catch is there's a soundtrack that's playing all the while, which is very stressful music that kind of ramps up the intensity, and occasionally there are sound cues that force you to go back to the entrance of the temple within an allotted amount of time, and if you don't, you lose one of your dice. So what's cool about this also is that the dice can be locked. There's one side of the die that if you roll it, you're not allowed to roll it again until you get something else, and occasionally all of your dice become locked. Since this is a cooperative game, then other players can come in and help you unlock your locked dice, and it's crazy and frantic, and there's a bunch of expansions that I actually haven't played with. I've only played the original, but it's a lot of fun. I enjoy it quite a bit, so that's why it is my number 78. Escape the Curse of the Temple. My number 77 is Karuba. Karuba is a tile-laying game with a bingo-like aspect. So players all place the exact same tile onto their boards at the same time, and they're all trying to connect the same 4 points along the sides of their boards together. But inevitably, nobody ends up placing all of their tiles in the same places, so everyone has a different configuration of paths by the end of the game. You're picking up crystals, trying to connect the points on the sides of your board, and it's pretty quick, and it's easy to learn and play. This one made a big splash a couple of years ago, but it honestly it seems like it's fell out of discussion. I still really like it. I will play it just about any time, so that's why it's my number 77, Karuba. My number 76 is a game that most people are surprised to hear that I like, and that is Revolution. Revolution can be a little bit mean, which is why most people are surprised I like it so much. In Revolution, players are using a unique bidding mechanism to gain control in different areas of the board. The way the bidding works is there's a board of different people that you can influence using 3 different types of resources, either money, power, or force. And you bid secretly on which people you want to influence each round, and then when players reveal, whoever bid the most of a specific resource or resources on that person will gain the influence of that section of the board. So it can be mean because if you bid a lot on something and someone else outbid you by just a little bit, you lose those resources and you're kind of out of luck. I've heard some people play with a variant where if you lose a bid, you get your resources back. I've never actually played it that way, but I've been curious to try it. I do want to say that for this game specifically, I always recommend playing with at least one of the expansions because the board that you can bid on is larger and has more options on it. So that way there's less of that, oh gosh, everybody bid on the same thing kind of moment, which can be frustrating. So I guess if you play with the variant, the original wouldn't be so bad, but otherwise, I like it anyway. It's a lot of fun. Yes, it's a little mean, but you usually have specific reasons for why you would do specific things, and it's kind of, there's no hard feelings, if that makes sense. And that is why it is my number 76, Revolution. My number 75 is a game that also has bidding in it, and that is Castles of Mad King Ludwig. In this game, players are taking tiles that represent different rooms of a castle and putting them together to create the best castle that they can. The rooms are all different shapes and sizes, so fitting them together in the way that you want and then a way that'll score the most points is an interesting puzzle. But what makes this even better is that each round, one of the players gets to take all of the rooms that were selected for that round, and they get to set the prices for how much people will be paying for them. So if there's a room that comes out that you really want, you may want to price it low so you can get it cheap. But if you price it too low, maybe some other player will snatch it up before you have a chance to get it. It's really fun and interesting. There's a new game that came out later called Palaces of Mad King Ludwig, but I haven't played that one, so I can't really compare them or know if I would like that better. But I do really like Castles of Mad King Ludwig, which is why it is my number 75. My number 74 is Flashpoint Fire Rescue. This game is a cooperative game where players are taking on the roles of firefighters attempting to save people from a burning building. It sounds kind of grim, but the artwork is fairly light and cartoony, so it doesn't feel as dark and scary as you might expect based on the theme. It's really interesting, and I think I've always kind of liked games like this. I used to play PC games that were firefighting simulators as well, so when I saw this one I had to try it and I really enjoyed it. There's a bunch of expansions for it that I haven't played with, but the base game itself comes with a couple of different things you can do with it and different characters. You're trying to rush in, rescue people from the building, prevent the building from collapsing, all of the things that you would kind of expect from the way a building would burn can happen. The fire can spread quickly or slowly depending on what's happening around it. There are some die rolls involved in how the fire spreads, so it can be a little bit random and potentially punishing at times, but I think that's the sign of a good cooperative game. You don't want it to be too easy, and fighting fires is certainly not an easy task. So that is why it is my number 74, Flashpoint Fire Rescue. My number 73 is Sheriff of Nottingham. Sheriff of Nottingham is a set collection game where players are all merchants in the town of Nottingham trying to get their goods to their stalls to sell to the public. But the trick is that your goods might get inspected by the sheriff on your way into town. Each player gets to take on the role of the sheriff during the course of the game. And when you're the sheriff, when players bring their goods through to you in their little bag, which has a snap enclosure on it, you get to choose whether you want to inspect their bag or not. When players declare what's in the bag, they have to declare something that's a legal good, but that doesn't mean that's what's in their bag. There could be other legal goods in there instead, or contraband, which is definitely not allowed. As the sheriff, you can be as straightforward or not as you want, and when I play the sheriff, I like to role play it quite a bit. I demand bribes from the other players to not open their bags, or bribes to open the other players' bags, and it's always a lot of fun, especially if you really get into the role of the sheriff. So I love it, it's great fun, and I would recommend it to just about anybody, especially those of you who kind of like role-playing but don't want to go hardcore with it. So that is my number 73, Sheriff of Nottingham. My number 72 is Walk the Plank. In Walk the Plank, you and the other players take on the roles of pirates who have upset the captain of the ship. He doesn't like you very much, and so he says most of you have to go, but you have to work it out on your own. So the pirates start shoving each other off of the ship. Isn't that right, maybe? Yeah. So you're playing cards in programmed movement ways, where you're playing 3 at a time at the beginning of each round, and then those cards will go off 1 at a time. But what the other players do might affect the cards you played. So some of the cards you can play involve either retracting or extending the plank, dragging meeples backward or forward, or shoving meeples forward or backward. And you have multiple meeples of your own color, so sometimes you can end up negatively or positively affecting the movement of your own meeples, or sometimes it's your opponent's. It's a lot of fun, and it's really, really silly. I like it a lot. It's very colorful, the art is very cartoony, and it's just a lot of neat fun to play. So that's why it is my number 72, Walk the Plank. My number 71 is Telestrations. Telestrations is one of my favorite party games. I love it because it basically combines the childhood games of Pictionary and Telephone into one very ridiculous game. So everyone has a flip board of dry erase sheets in front of them, and on the first one you'll write a word. The box comes with a big set of cards with words on them, or you can make up your own if you want. You write the word, then you flip the page. Pass the book. The player looks at the word you wrote, then tries to draw it on the page that follows the word. Then they pass the book, and the next player will only look at the drawing that the player before them drew. Then they'll write what they think it is. Then they pass the book, and the next player looks at just the word that was just written and tries to draw that. As you can expect, just like in a game of Telephone when you were a kid, sometimes things get lost in translation, and eventually an umbrella ends up being the Queen of England by the end of it, or something like that. I will say that I have played this with adults, and things can get a little bit dirty at times, depending on who you're playing with, but it can also be quite PG or G if you want it to. So I think you can play this game with kids and adults alike, and this is a great one for a party or a large group. They sell it in boxes that come with up to 12 different booklets. So this is great for a large group, and it's a lot of fun, and that is why it is my number 71, Telestrations.